All right, you're back right here. Thanks so much for being here on the Gill Connections podcast. I'm so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham. I was driving in today thinking about today's interview, which I'm super excited about. I was going to do my best Justin Gatlin impression because I really love what Jay's doing on his podcast, Ready, Set, Go, but I don't want to taint his legacy. So go listen to the Ready, Set, Go podcast. I think him and the Bearded Wonder are doing a great job over there, and just so pumped and excited for my friend and what he's doing there. So there's my little plug for Jay and the Ready Set Go podcast. And now let's plug today's guest. This will be fun. I've known this guy for a long time. We've had a lot of fun experiences and stories together, and nationals, and just great athletes and great people that he's coached and been around. So I'm really pumped for this. Help me welcome the head coach from Missouri Southern State University in the great Joplin, Missouri, the wise, the wonderful Mr. Bryan Shiding. Bryan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. How's life in Joplin, Missouri?
Hot, very hot.
Is that right?
Oh yeah,
That's like everywhere, right? I mean,
yeah.
in
I
today's
think so.
world.
Yeah,
I don't know, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know enough about climate change and of course the politicization, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say of it. But it does seem like everywhere is more hot now. Like maybe not certain places are hotter, but everywhere is hot now. Where it used to be like right now we'd be in Minnesota being like, oh, it's great. I bet it's freaking 100 degrees up there right now for crying out
yeah. They're
loud.
probably feeling it as well.
Yeah, so friggin' hot. Dude, I love you, first of all. And I love that you're at Missouri Southern and Joplin, because that city, that school has a fun place in my heart, in my life. When I coached junior college across the border, I think Missouri Southern might have been the very first track meet we ever went to. And that was my first head coaching gig.
Mhm.
So that meant a lot to me. The head coach that was there at the time was a real legacy guy
Sure.
that was there. And I met a girlfriend, a former volleyball player there when I was over there as well. So at least it's just a lot of fun memories, man. I really love Joplin and Missouri Southern. So
That's funny because I met my wife through Missouri Southern,
is
so
that
we have in
right?
common. Yeah.
Well, no. I did not marry this young lady.
Well,
My
yeah.
wife every once in a while listens to this podcast when she's bored. I do not want her hearing that part of it all. But are you going to tell me your wife, was she a volleyball player though?
No, she was not. She
Okay,
was
all right.
a track and
Because
field athlete.
then I would start going, wait a minute, it's not the same young lady. Oh, that would be so embarrassing. Oh my God, would that
A
be
little
embarrassing?
awkward.
All right, Bryan, let's hop into this, man. First of all, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm excited to explore your journey, to learn from you, and to share some of your experiences with our listeners. So I'm super pumped for this, man. So why don't we get started? Let's hop in our Wayback Machine. Assuming, and we have certainly learned over 300 plus episode that not every coach was an athlete. That's not a prereq to become a track and field coach, probably any coach. But assuming you were an athlete, where does track and field start for you?
Track and field starts in Pennsylvania, York, Pennsylvania, and probably third or fourth grade field days.
Oh wow, yeah, okay.
I was always a soccer player growing up, and that was my first sport and really my only sport for the longest time. But we always looked forward to field days in elementary school where, you had the softball toss, the base run.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, we would scissor kick over this, you know, triangle razor bar and a
Oh
high jump
wow.
into a sawdust pit. And
Whoa,
but
whoa,
yeah,
whoa, wait, wait, Brian, you're not that old. Are you serious?
oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that I'm that old, but at that point in my life,
Yeah, yeah.
field days, we would scissor kick over.
Wow.
It was a metal bar. It was a
Yeah,
triangle,
yeah,
right? And then
yeah.
we would land in a sawdust pit. Now, right, we're in fourth grade, so I'm assuming that middle and high school had better at that time. I don't
Yeah.
recall. But I remember that very clearly just because that bar was frightening. It scared the life out of you.
We made those bars, obviously, so we have some kind of in our little museum. And I still, when I look at them, I'm like, what a-hole design? Like you had circular tubing back then. Let's not kid ourselves. It wasn't like all tubing came in triangles, and that's why it happened to be that. Someone chose a triangle design for the one event, the two events, pole vault and high jump, that you could actually land on that stinking thing. How many vertebrae are still bruised because of those things?
Pretty frightening concept there.
Pretty frightening concept. I just hope, we've invented a lot of things throughout the, 100 plus years we've been in business. I hope we weren't the actual inventors of that. I really hope we were just like, all right, triangles, I guess that's what we're doing. And we just went with it until we figured out how to do fiberglass, for crying out loud.
The triangle, it wouldn't break very easily. So super strong, they'd last forever.
I don't know. I think the ones in our little museum are all bent because, these things,
Our people landed on them. Sure.
yeah. And every time I see that, I'm like, oh, that's some poor soul landed on that to bend that. Anyway, okay. I love field days because did you guys do the three-legged race? I had that when I was a field day.
No, we never had the three-legged race.
Okay.
It was those, the aforementioned events, and then we had a 75-yard sprint,
Oh.
right? And then we had a relay, which was like 4 by 75 on a soccer field, something like
Hmm.
that, in the grass.
Yeah.
It was fun to compete,
Hmm.
right? And that's always kind of been my thing. I really love competition. There's the
Yeah.
concept of competition, and then once we moved up into fourth and fifth grade, we went against the other fourth and fifth grade schools in the district, and that was
Nice.
actually at the middle school. So that's where track started for me, and then from there, I just kept moving.
Were sometimes we'll hear that story and maybe obvious, it'll be the coach who, I loved it because I won the mile race or I won the 75. Were you the guy winning these things or do you just loved competing no matter if you were second, third, fourth, or fifth?
I loved competition. Being a soccer player, I guess growing up, the team concept of sports, I always had a lot of anxiety with team sports, like with
Hmm.
expectations and teammates, and I don't really know why. But looking back, I
Mhm.
realized that I wasn't just kind of nervous; I was pretty anxious being around a lot of kids. So
Hmm.
when it came to that individual sport, when it was just me and everything had to do with how I performed, I really enjoyed that a lot more.
Yeah.
And I was pretty fast, for a little turd and running around in grade school. But yeah, once we got to that point, like the long jump kind of started developing into my thing through middle school, and
Hmm.
sprinting and triple jumping were, I started doing pretty well in them, through middle and then obviously through high school.
Did you grew up as a soccer player first, primary? Did that continue through high school? Were you both soccer and track, or did you
Oh yeah,
start favoring one?
I played soccer for all three, seasons throughout my whole life from the age of 5 through
Wow.
pretty much 17, 18. Um, but then once high school kind of came along, I guess we backed off on all the club,
Mm.
and then we moved in. So funny story, I played basketball when I was in eighth grade. I made the basketball team. I was so excited about it, right?
Nice.
And then I sat the bench because I was absolutely terrible. I was an awful basketball player. I still am to this day. Uh, so when we moved into high school, I tried out for the freshman basketball team, and the same coach actually moved from eighth grade up to the ninth grade. And after tryouts, he just walked over and said, Brian, it's just not going to work out for high school. It broke my heart. I was first thing I'd ever been cut from, and just
Oh.
it was terrible, but it was what it was. But that was the same year that our high school started a winter track program. So it
Oh.
ended up working out perfectly for me. And because I
Interesting.
really, truly loved looking forward to that spring season when I could go out and run track and do all these events.
Yeah.
So starting that winter track league or season for us in high school was it was a blessing, right? It really changed my life on. So now I could do track 2 seasons a year, right? Winter and spring. And I
Right.
just loved it.
We've been exploring more and more on the show about that you are absolutely you are where you are supposed to be right now. Whether that's a
Mhm.
good thing, a bad thing, doesn't mean you're stuck there either. I can see ninth grade Bryan trying out for the basketball team, getting cut. That's devastating. I don't care who you are. If you got cut, that's devastating, especially as a young person. You're trying to find your groove and your clique, your gang. Who you're trying to, who your boys are and stuff. And you get cut from something you think is maybe part of your identity because you made the eighth grade team. I
Sure.
can see that and thinking like this is the worst ever. I don't want to go to school and like I can just like I'm kind of portraying my own son probably. He starts ninth grade tomorrow, by the way. So I could probably portraying what I think he would do. And yet they start an indoor a winter season for track and here you and so that's where you were supposed to be. You were supposed to go do winter track, so that
Yeah.
worked out. I love that. Did you mentioned it's super interesting, and Bryan, I really appreciate your humbleness and authenticity to share maybe some of the not so good parts. You talked about this anxiety with teams. Again, thank you for being open with that. Did that, because you mentioned you made the eighth grade basketball team. Is that a theme that through high school, or did you ever, I don't want to say get over it because that's who you are, at least at that point. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
I think a lot of it had to do with confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and since I had played soccer from the age of 5 on, I always had a lot of confidence in that, and I continued to play that obviously through high school.
Right.
But basketball is something that I played pickup games a little bit here and there, or baseball. When I played club baseball, I wasn't all that great at it, so I always kind of in a sense, you put all that pressure on yourself, even when you're that young,
Yeah.
to be the guy on the team, right? Like, give me the ball. I'm the one that wants it. And I wasn't that certainly in baseball or basketball. But when I look back on it now, certainly knowing what we know now,
Yeah.
looking back, and it's funny because my folks are actually visiting from Pennsylvania right now as we speak.
Oh, nice.
But looking back on it, I'll have conversations with my dad and my mom about it sometimes, and just, you guys realize how nervous a kid I was. I was a really nervous kid, and looking back, and even especially through middle school, I think a lot of that is like you were just saying, trying to find your groove, trying to be one of the boys. And I really kind of found that niche through track and soccer. But yeah, certainly something that looking back, realizing, man, I was a pretty nervous kid in a lot of
Mm.
those areas.
Yeah. It's that's interesting. Your experience with it on the team side. I've heard the other side where people that would express something very similar about anxiousness, nervousness, etc. What you're saying on the team side, I've heard the other side where people liked being a team versus an individual sport because in the team I can hide a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Or I can have an automatic excuse, right? Brian, you didn't become an NBA player because your eighth grade basketball coach benched you instead of starting you. You know what I'm saying? Like you can manufacture these excuses where in track or, swimming, it's like, well, you're the one in the lane. Everybody's looking at you, and people have some anxiousness about that. And it
Mhm.
really just shines a light on that. We're all dealing with something. I literally was in the gym this morning. And I was like, man, there's a guy in there that was just, good looking dude and, jacked. And I was like, man, I can't do that to save my life. That guy's perfect. He probably has the greatest job and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I literally caught myself on the treadmill. I was like, that dude's going through something because we all are. So
Sure,
again,
no
I
doubt.
just appreciate that experience from you. Okay, so tell me about high school track and field. You're kind of alluding that you were a jumper sprinter. What was your
Yeah,
experience in high
so
school?
it wasn't really until middle school, taking a step back, I realized my dad used to take me out to the high school track when I was in middle school to practice
Hmm.
because the high school had this new all-weather track that no other schools had in the area, right? And it was the coolest thing. Wow, a rubber runway on the infield of a football.
Yeah.
So he would take me over there sometimes, and we'd go through. And one day he just told me, "Oh yeah, I used to long jump in high school, and I had the York High School record." Like, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So it was kind of a little bit built into it, right? But
Yeah.
he was really very much into it. And he was also my coach through soccer for, probably 10 out of my 15 years of playing.
Okay. Wow.
Always into it. But, moving forward, I had just great coaches in high school. I had the same head coach, Mike Schuler, who still coaches in the area to this day,
Nice.
who just really, his passion for the sport, helping the kids out and focusing on the individual, really, it made me dig it, right? Like I just
Hmm.
loved showing up and loved doing things, and didn't always love the workouts. And I look back on and think, man, I was doing bounding in concrete hallways over these blocking pads that were 15 feet apart when I was in ninth grade. It's kind of scary. But the passion, Coach Schuler and then Dave Fogel, I thought he was my jumps coach. He was the coolest guy. Like, wow, this guy jumped in college. He must be the man, right? And looking at it, and he was a Shippensburg grad, and he was a pretty good
Nice.
jumper and sprinter himself. But we just had a great group of supportive coaches, and the team grew and grew and grew. And to be honest, that program and those guys that we ended up kind of being a part of for 4 years or so through high school, we were really successful, right?
Hmm.
On the track side of it as a team. I went back this past March to visit with my family. Um, and I had a chance to drive over to the high school, right? The high school has since moved, and it's been, gosh, a long time, 28, 29, 30
Mhm.
years since high school, right? Whatever it might be. And I went and I was looked for the record board because I was just kind of interested in it and just to see. And you look at the years 90, 95 through 96, and the majority of the sprint jumps records, throws records are still standing at the high school.
Wow.
So of course I took a picture of it and sent it to my athletes on the team. Like, Coach, you were an athlete. Yeah, back in the day, I
Don't
was.
you forget it. That's right.
Yeah. But it built that group of guys, and so much of it was the work ethic and just the fun they built into it, right?
Yeah.
Learning how to train indoors without a track. And I look back at the stuff we did when I was 15 years old up on the deck of a bleachers, and I can still relate some of the stuff I do with my jumpers now,
Right.
to the things they were doing then. But really, it was just such a great group of coaches and individuals that really helped us build that bond and love for the sport. And
What
certainly them, pushing that team aspect. We're individuals, right? I mean, that's what track is. And you made the comment earlier, the team versus the individual sports. Like for whatever reason in track and field, I loved being the guy on the runway.
mm,
I loved being kind of, when you're on the run, you're the only one. Everybody's watching what you're doing or what you're,
yeah.
and that excited me. I really liked
That's
that, and
interesting.
I was okay. I could hold my own. I wasn't a superstar or anything, but we did well. But the coaches really instilled just such a love of the sport for us.
That's so interesting. What kind of athlete were you? And what I mean by that, I don't care what your PR, I don't think I've ever asked anybody what their PRs are, because I don't really care. It doesn't matter if you're a good athlete, not so good, in the middle. It literally has nothing to do with your coaching and becoming a coach. But what I mean by that, when I ask you what kind of athlete you were, knowing that, spoiler alert, you become a track coach, were you the kind of guy like when coach would whether it was prescribe a workout or talk to you about technique of your jump, were you the guy that was like really in depth wanting to learn more about that, or were you, and remember you're 16 17 years old, all grace to be like, no man, coach said run, I ran. Or were
Mm-hmm.
you that guy of just like, okay, coach said jump that, so coach said put my leg here? What kind of, at this point, what kind of athlete were you?
I think in the jumping events, right? So when we were learning how to long jump, learning how to triple jump, I was really excited about it, really interested in it. And beyond my coaches at the school, again, my father would be helping me in the background, and I still remember him buying books, right? And
Yeah.
USA Coaching Manual and the Book of Jumps, and
Yep.
um, he would go and he would film me at these meets with a camcorder that sat on your shoulder, right? And this was before the dawn of the internet and all these research, and he would take pictures of still shots on our television, 35 millimeter. He would take a picture, 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 and it would have my full triple jump, all phases, everything through, and he
No
would tape them together for me and put it there.
way.
And he was really into it, right?
What did
So,
I know you mentioned dad coached you in soccer for most of your life. What did he do like for a profession? Like was he a teacher, a coach? What?
so he ran um, for lack of better terms, a company that made books, right? School books, actually.
Huh,
It was a family business. He and his brother took it over from his father,
wow.
um, and he made a lot of sacrifices to get there. He never missed a track meet in 4 years of high school.
Wow.
Um, Probably only missed a handful of meets through 4 years of college, and this was driving up to Boston and driving down to Carolina. And he was he made the time for it. Now, this was a guy that got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, drove an hour and a half to work one way, but he would never miss anything. Pretty neat.
But only child, brothers, sisters?
Older brother.
Okay.
We couldn't be more different. Right? My brother's an artist, a very successful muralist, actually, but
Oh, wow.
not be more different.
Is that right? That's so
Mm-hmm.
cool. I love that because that's not me either. I'm not an art. I still am working on my stick figure. So to hear someone be an artist, it's always like, how do you do that? When people, draw these things, it's like, that is voodoo magic to me, man. Holy cow.
Super, super talented, and my daughter's picked up his genetics.
Oh,
She's
wow.
really into art. My son's really into sports.
Ha, that's cool.
But stepping back, so yeah, he made so much sacrifice being that
Yeah.
coach behind the scenes. And I look back and think of the turd I was and getting frustrated at meets or things like that. And looking at, you can see pictures of me in the old video camera, like, stop filming, that was terrible, But
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
but it,
again, all grace. You're 14, 15, 16.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, we're still we're dummies today at our age. We certainly were dummies back in, 14,
most
15
definitely.
years old. Did you have I mean, I love this. Like this seems like a healthy parent involvement, meaning I don't hear that he was telling you, hey, I know coach said do this, but don't do that, do it this
Never.
way. I don't hear that. I
No.
hear, I'm gonna show up to every meet. First of all, showing up, how valuable is that? That's 80% of the work. Parents
Right.
show up.
Yeah.
uh he's taken like I can literally see this playing the video, him taking his camera. He puts these together for you. I mean, that's like, did you get a sense? Because you have friends on the team. Did you get a sense like no one? I'm assuming no one else's dad was necessarily doing this. Did you kind of feel
No,
that?
I don't. That was a special group of kids. You look in the '80s and so much has changed. But in the area that I grew up in, the school that I was in, the group of friends and teams that we were on, it was a lot of very supportive parents. Now,
Mm,
I don't know that any other parent was going through, those steps,
right, right, right.
but most of them were showing up, right? And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was neat because it did build that team and family environment.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. That's amazing. Okay, but I cut you off. What type of athlete were you? Were you really? So I'd see what Dad was doing. Are you kind of, I'm gonna say, mimicking that with with the coach on the actual field? Like, were you asking him questions like, so why should the leg be that? Like, were you trying to understand what he or she was teaching, or just doing it?
Yeah, technically, yes, for jumping.
Hmm.
When it came to sprinting, I just wanted to be as fast as possible, right?
Mm.
And if we were doing a workout that was anything over 200, I certainly was the guy like, oh man, here we go. Like I still remember because everybody's on the 4x4 and we were okay, but uh, I still remember the repeat 300 days and just how awful they were and how much we hated them.
Yeah,
But yeah, when it came down to the technical aspects of the jumping events, I really did. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn why and how, and
hmm,
um, and I think we tried to learn as much as we could.
yeah.
But it's interesting now because all you have to do is type something in, click, and you can come up with
Oh, it's
50 coaches that are so much smarter than me that we can figure this stuff out at, and
it's amazing.
instant gratification of videos online. But
Yeah, it's amazing.
back then it was so much of it was just take a step back. You're reading a book, you're looking, you're having these discussions. It was,
Yeah.
but yeah. So the type of athlete, yeah, I wanted to learn, but at the same time, I hated to run. And to this day, just going out and jogging, I feel like I need to because I can say, all right, I can still jog at my age, and it doesn't kill me, but I still just dislike running.
I love that. I love that. You mentioned coaches, head coach, and your jumps coach really made a big deal out of the team aspect of track and field.
Mhm.
I love that. We've had lots of coaches on here who have that attitude, and that maybe needs to be the next like cultural thing that goes through all of our coaches is let's remember it is a team sport, hopefully first and foremost. But can you think of a story or an anecdote how did they put that in action? When you say that, maybe there's a story of like, oh man, I remember we used to do ice cream after the meets or whatever. You used to have cook. I don't know. I don't want to put ideas in your head, but was there, how did they exemplify that to you that there was a team?
The team dinner aspect was phenomenal. It was great, and just like we do here in most programs, right? You break up kind of into your groups. Like I
Mhm.
was always hanging out with the jumpers, or we were hiding under the pole vault pads so the coach wouldn't see us for the 300s. Uh, but I do very specifically, Dave, Coach Vogel, we would go over to, he was just out of college. So at the time he was still living with his parents. I still remember going over to his parents' house, having a spaghetti dinner and watching Days of Thunder in his living room with all the
Nice.
jumpers, right? And Days of Thunder's got us all pumped up for that district championship the next weekend. But just yeah, that specifically, like team dinners to me
Yeah.
and team bonding in your groups is
Yeah.
a special thing. And to this day, we have the jumpers over to my house all the time, or we
Yeah.
have the nationals kids that are going to the championships. We do barbecues and things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's got to be one of the more challenging aspects of a coach. And for some reason, and I don't sit in the seat anymore, so I could be wrong from this perspective, but it seems easier in high school than college of getting everybody together. In high school, I say it's easier because we're typically doing, let's call it a 3 to 5, 2 to 4 practice. Throwers are over there, jumpers are over there, but you can bring everybody together at 5, or you can bring everybody together a Saturday for a movie at the house,
Sure,
things
sure.
like that. Where college, I mean, I just, not only are throwers over there, but throwers are over there from 10 o'clock, and your sprinters are all the way over here, and they're not until 3 o'clock, and distance runners are always on the roads or whatever. It just seems like that's certainly a challenge for our track coaches of how do you get the team together when the team is all football, defense and offense are over there, but they come together for script. They're together. Baseball, they're together. This is a unique sport when it comes to that aspect. Okay, senior year, where are you in relationship to coaching as a potential career? Is there any thought at this point like, oh, I'm going to become a coach?
Absolutely zero.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, good. Love.
Yeah.
I actually love that. And we've had both sides, right? I can't remember who it was. Somebody was like they were a coach's kid, so that I think helped play into it. But they were like, oh yeah, since I was 7 years old, like I knew I wanted to be. My dad, he coached, so I wanted to be that, and so they were on the path from very young. A lot of our coaches, no clue, no clue that it even can be a profession, even though it's sitting right in front of you. There's a
Sure.
coach who's working with you, and they don't even think that it's a career. Okay, so senior year, coaching right now, not even in your head, not even a thought as a career. Talk to us about college, like where you end up going, and what at that point as an 18-year-old, what were you going to major in? What was the thought? What were you going to become? You thought anyway.
Well, going in, I've always been a homebody. To this day, I'm a homebody. I'd rather sit at home on a weekend than go to the beach.
Amen. Yep.
But I knew that going to college and running track was going to be an option, right? That there was, through the recruiting process and whatnot. And it was always funny because Coach Schuler, starting from day one, because back then it wasn't text messages and emails, it was letters in the mail or handwritten letters. But I would get a letter, it would go to the guidance office, then it would go to my track coach, and he would open it and read it because he wanted to see what the coaches would all have to say. And then he would hand it to me with a letter written, hey, Schuler opened this and read it. But so I knew track was an option. But I
Do you
also
remember? Hold on, pause, because I'm interested in this because I love experiences, right? And story, like the stories of the experiences. Do you remember the first recruiting letter you got and what that meant to you, or if anything, you could again,
I don't
you're 16
remember,
years old, 17 years old. I give a lot of grace to young people, man.
or I don't remember the the actual school. I remember a number of the schools. I don't
Yeah,
remember the first one.
yeah.
But to be honest with you, I still have every recruiting letter in a satchel in a box in my basement.
No way.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're all in a little zip pouch that I kept everything together. I've always been kind of neat freak, but yeah,
So
I
we're
still have all of them.
we're a little old. I'm older than you, by the way. Quit saying you're old because I know I'm older than you. What year did you graduate high school? You graduated like 97, 96?
96, yeah.
Yeah, I'm 94. So quit saying you're old because I'm older. Uh, so you may not remember the first one. I get that. But it obviously meant something to you. You kept them
Oh
20,
yeah,
30 years on. That's pretty cool, man. Because
yeah.
I
It
just,
was neat. And some of them were just, some of the schools I would look at and think, man, I see that school on TV playing football on the weekends. That's
yeah,
pretty
sure,
amazing, right?
sure.
And part of that part of that process being more of a homebody is okay, let's look at these schools. Where can I get back on the weekend if I want to see my girlfriend?
Yeah, yeah,
Something
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
which in
Uh-huh.
hindsight was one of the dumber parts of my decision.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but also not really thinking coaching was ever going to be a part of the mix.
Right.
I wanted to pick a school that was going to put me in a position after 4 years that I was going to be successful no matter what I did.
Hmm.
Okay, so academics to me was a huge part of my decision. I
Okay.
didn't, in my teenage mind, and certainly with probably some influence on my father's side and my mom's side,
Right.
I wanted to choose a school not just for track,
Right.
obviously, but I wanted to choose a school that would put me in a position, if I was going to be a teacher, if I was going to be the next big stockbroker, if I was going to be, whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to be successful. The name of the school meant something to me, right?
You just named off pretty three radical different careers. So I'm not necessarily hearing like you had like I wanted to be a stockbroker, so I was going to go somewhere where fine. Like, are you still pretty open on what the future
Very
Bryan
open,
looks like? Yeah, okay.
very open. I was pretty darn good at math.
Hmm.
English, on the other hand, yeah, not so much, right? So you put those two together, you're thinking, okay, engineer. Uh,
Hmm.
so I actually went in my freshman year as an engineer to where I ended up going. But so something maybe
Engineering.
along the
Wow.
math idea.
Yeah.
I ended up going on a number of visits, but I went to Bucknell University.
Yeah,
Uh,
is that right? Bison, baby.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Bison.
Yeah.
It was an hour and a half from my home,
Okay, I was gonna ask. Yeah.
and academically, golly, you're not going to get much better.
Super solid, right? Hmm.
But I still remember, and even to this day, it's been 10, 15 years since I've been on campus. But I still remember driving onto campus and immediately, this place is amazing, right? It's beautiful, it's well kept. It was what I felt college should look like and be, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's so interesting because you're talking about this, you're expressing this today as a 40-year-old, but you had to see that through 18, 17, 18-year-old eyes. That's what's always fascinating to me. How we see things at our age, we forget because we sometimes, as a coach, some of our job is to judge 17, 18-year-olds, right? Whether I'm going to give them a scholarship, how much, et cetera, et cetera.
mm,
So to know and kind of envision how they see things, like
mm,
you show them this nice shiny track or whatever, and they're like, I don't care. Where is the food? Where's the commissary? That's what I want to. You know what I'm saying? Like, or vice versa. You show them the new Chick-fil-A and they're like, whatever, dude. Where's the weight room? You know what I'm saying? Like you've got to really. This is such a hard job for college coaches. You've got to understand what the motivator is for that kid to pick a school while you're trying to learn, is that kid going to fit into your program? And they're all different, by the way. I mean, every 17-year-old kid is wildly, wildly different. What a tough aspect. So to see your 17-year-old brain, like, man, this is what this in my head, what I thought college looked like. That's what Bucknell was.
yeah. And I actually, the neighborhood in which I grew up with, we had numerous people, ironically, graduated from Bucknell, right? And they were all
Oh,
very successful. And so I kind of had that in the back of my mind. I had a
mm-hmm.
neighbor actually right across the street, cat a corner from us. She went to Bucknell and she played soccer. So when I was up there on my recruiting visit, I ran into her, right? And she was my brother's age. She was 4 years older. So, but in any case, went on campus, just loved the campus, right? And it was one of their bigger recruiting. It was the December weekend. They brought in a lot of kids.
All right.
We went off with our hosts, and unlike the food in the commissary area, I walked into their brand new resurfaced indoor 200-meter track, right? And it smelled new, right? It had that new smell, new track smell to it. But I just remember thinking, man, I get to train on that thing all the
Mm.
time. What an
Wow.
amazing, nice outdoor facility and such. But part of that decision to go there, Art Golden was the head coach there
Mm.
for, a very, very long time.
Right.
And his son's a super successful coach right now as well. And gosh, there's so much history in the distance programs at Bucknell, and
Yeah.
the track programs have done super well as well. But he had an air about him where you wanted to perform for this guy,
Hmm.
and on my recruiting visit, and this is going to sound super corny and weird, but I remember on my recruiting visit thinking I was hot stuff and I had my hat on backwards, right? And I was a cool guy. I had my hat on backwards. And he met with all the recruits and their families and such. But then he went on he used to call them one lappers, right? Bryan, come on a lapper with me. And we just walked around the indoor track for a lap, right? Now, when you were a recruit, that meant he wanted to get to know you and talk to you. When you were an athlete, if you went on a one lapper, well, you probably messed up. And I went on plenty of those in college.
The
But I
evolution of the
remember
one
him,
lapper.
yeah. But I remember very vividly, and probably even the hat to this day, but I remember him walking on the back stretch of that track and saying, Bryan, if you want to be a part of my program, you better turn that hat around. And right then and there, it was almost instant respect for this guy, and I think if I said that right now, I'd probably get like, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
But it was instant respect. Like, wow, I want to compete for this guy. right? Um, so, hat got turned around. We finished the walk. And at the time, Bucknell was one of those academic only type scholarship schools, right? They
Oh,
had
right.
financial aid for families in need. Um, but it was one of the few schools that I was looking at that was, sorry, we don't have athletic scholarships, but I chose there, and we were fortunate enough to be able to attend, because I knew that going to a school like that would get me in a position to be successful afterwards, regardless of what I wanted to do. But
Yeah.
even more than that, it was just, I think when you know, right? And
Yeah.
I say that to all the recruits when they come in the office and they sit here, it's buildings are bricks and mortars. It's what's within the buildings. It's the staff. It's the coaches. It's the kids. And I felt instantly connected to the school, when I ended up going on that recruiting trip. And I mean, the rest was history. He was there the next fall, and was competing.
That seems like, I have a hard time after 300 plus interviews remembering them all. I know I'm just gonna one day mess up and invite someone onto the show who's already been on the show. I can't. I'm ready for this email and be like, oh, what an idiot. But like I hear quite often like, oh, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, or not meaning that they ended up being a teacher, but like I went to school to be an engineer or a teacher or business, etc. Again, doesn't mean that they ended up that way, but they knew that. Or I hear, I was so aimless, Mike. I knew I was supposed to go to college. So I went to college, but I had no clue. So I started out undecided, and then eventually I found,
Mhm.
history or whatever. This is a unique aspect where you're kind of the best of both worlds. You're not locked in on a major necessarily, but you're locked in like, I want to be successful. So you weren't aimless in the sense of like, I don't know what I want to do. You're like, you had a goal up here. You just didn't know how to swim upriver to get to it. You didn't know
Sure.
what major, etc., to go there. So you started out as engineering, though.
I started out as engineering, and again, it was from a math perspective. I
Yeah,
enjoyed math. I had no idea what I was getting into at that point, right?
yeah.
I do remember a number of my teachers and coaches warning me, "Hey, where you're going to college, it's not hard to fail out of the place." And it was
What a
funny.
motivation speech.
I do remember, again, really vividly, when we're on the recruiting trip, one of the big talks by Coach Golden was, and I'll mess up the exact wording, but paraphrasing, there are two institutions in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. One is a penitentiary,
Oh, jeez.
one is Bucknell University. One's really easy to get into and hard to get out of. One's really hard to get into, but easy to get out of, right?
That's awesome.
So that's what we had going in, right? Um, but went in engineering, and that lasted all of a year, right? And I got through the math, and I was okay through the calcs and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. But boy, physics and some of these other courses, just my
right.
eyes got huge, and I ended up falling back on economics,
Hmm.
right? And still to this day, I probably should have been a biology major, knowing what I know now,
Oh,
but
right, 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 right.
um, yeah, it's what worked, right? I
Yeah.
just kind of fell into the major. I had a number of friends that were in the major as well, so we worked together with some stuff. Um, but yeah, I knew, right? It was the next progressive step after high school. I never even thought of not going to college. It
Right.
wasn't even a thought in my head, right? But I knew wherever I went, I had to make a decision based on everything except, well, I shouldn't say except everything above athletics, but still including athletics, right?
I love that you were engineering and then go to economics and that you weren't biology or phys ed or some of the, I'm gonna call it the, I don't want to call it a traditional major for coaches because again, there's been plenty. We've had so many journalism majors and history majors and things like that. And I think a lot of those majors who go on to become track coaches do say kind of the same thing you just said. It's like, man, knowing what I know now, I would have taken biology or something like that. But I love that it shows that there is more than one route to become a coach. And
Oh,
we've been exploring so much that, maybe the X's and O's part are the easy part and everything else, culture, roster management, how you run your program, it can all kind of fit under the word culture is much more important. And if that's the case, then I don't know of a major called culture, by the way. So maybe you need economics or history or whatever you end up majoring in. That's really
well, and
cool.
so much of college, at least for me, it wasn't about the major. It
Hmm.
wasn't about the 4 classes a semester I was taking,
Right.
and the professors, yeah, they were great, and it was a wonderful education, and it was really hard, and I was way in over my head at that school. Um, but I had a tremendous experience. But that's exactly what it was. It was an experience. It was
Experience. Yeah.
learning time management. It was learning what to do,
Hmm.
what not to do, how you
Hmm.
speak to people.
Hmm. Hmm.
That life decisions have consequences.
Hmm.
And from all of those things, and I certainly have to put that. My roommate, my freshman year, was a pole vaulter, old Dave, and he was a very successful pole vaulter. He was 17 and a half foot jumper. Still has a record at Bucknell, but um, he was really integral in my journey through college and well beyond. And from a confidence standpoint, right? And I never lacked confidence performing in track and field ever, right? Like, for whatever reason, it just get me on the runway, get me in the blocks, good to go. But I certainly lacked confidence in some classes, or maybe some social aspects or things like that. And I still remember freshman year, Dave walks in and I'm having, a day or something, just looks at me and goes, Bryan, confidence is key in what you're doing, in everything that you're doing. Confidence is key in everything that you do. Right. And it still sticks to me to this day. And ironically, I was just talking to him just this morning.
Okay.
But the roommates we had in college, the experiences we had in college, how we lived, the day-to-day aspect of it, learning how to be an adult in those years, that's what transformed us. Not
Yeah.
not necessarily the education, the degree that's sitting up on the wall, right? I can look at
Right.
my economics degree and think, hey, that's great. If I really wanted to, maybe I could fall back on it sometime. Probably not anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's this like weird amalgamation of all the other things. And,
Yes,
and I
100%.
and I tell you, shout out to Dave because he probably didn't think what he was talking to you and telling you about with confidence was like monumental. Like I don't think he was like, "Oh, I'm about to change this dude's life. I'm gonna tell him about confidence." Right? That seems like that's just the type of person he was. Like he was a,
Yeah.
maybe a confident, a positive person, and he has his roommate, and you guys are both freshmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're both so you're still navigating a lot of things. There's things that he did not have confidence in. Let's be real, as a 18, 19-year-old freshman,
I
there
don't
there
know.
was something. There was something. I
Never
guarantee
lacked
it.
in that department.
But I love that he was what you needed at that time. Again, we are where we are. We are exactly where we should be, where we are right now, where your 2 feet are. So I love that those two people, you and Dave, were put together. There's a little bit of happenstance. There could have been a lot of other roommates
Oh, sure.
that you each had, and that was exactly what you needed at that moment. That's so cool. I
And
love that.
there was three of us, well, four of us, three of us that lived together for 3 of our 4 years, and then another one lived with us for his other 3 years.
That's cool.
Um, but those guys, right, that group, talk to them every day in text
Yeah.
messages or sending, the silly memes or whatever. But it really was a profound relationship. And in that, what eventually happened is I started leaning on Dave on how to coach pole vault, because I didn't know any X's or O's in that. I knew it was basically I was a decent long jumper who
Right.
understood the long jump and the mechanics and takeoff.
Right.
But then when I started coaching, I was on the phone with him, and I flew out to Atascadero, California, because he was training with Jan Johnson, and and learned how to coach from him. And he's a personal trainer to this day and very successful. So I still lean on him for a lot of stuff.
That's cool. Well, let's catch up in the middle there then, because you talk about learning. You become, again, spoiler. You become a track coach. Did something? Was there a transition during the college years that you went to economics? Was there like, oh, I'm gonna be a coach now because I'm an econ major? Was there a transition in college, or does that happen after college? The,
Well,
the transition to becoming, like I'm gonna become a track coach.
right. So, senior year interviewing for jobs, nothing was was sticking. Nothing
What
was really interesting.
what kind of
Any,
jobs? Like econ
anything
jobs?
from sales rep
Yeah, yeah,
positions,
yeah, yeah,
any, potential investment type
yeah,
positions.
yeah,
Um, Nothing was really sticking. And I knew flat out I didn't ever see myself sitting behind a desk.
yeah. Oh,
I,
that's a wrong major. Yeah,
I couldn't do it. And
yeah,
that was kind of the direction at which that major was kind of going. So I
absolutely.
kind of took a step back from the job application process and trying to figure that part out, and I talked to Coach Golden, and he suggested that I try to find a graduate assistantship. So again, I'm writing.
Do you think his suggestion for that was go find a GA because you're supposed to be a coach, or go find a GA position so that you can delay, I'm gonna call it the real world, like you have more time to figure things out?
I think still continuing to figure things out, but
Hmm.
he had always told me that he felt that I would be a good coach.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, taking a step back again, from recruiting visit through senior year, you just respected the man. And the more meets we would go to, if we go to Colonial Relays, or if we go to IC4As, or we go to some of these larger meets back in the day, and he was a very highly respected guy. So
Hmm.
we took what he said to us to heart, right? And he and I used to have some conversations when I was a senior just about competition. He just loved the competitive side. And, I think his suggestion was, again, just take that time. It'll help you, have some time to try to figure out what you want to do. You could
Hmm.
be a great coach. This could be a way to get into it, but also it's a way to continue your education if
Hmm.
that's what you want to get into.
Hmm.
So now I wrote a letter to,
What's I'm sorry to keep interrupting you.
sorry.
No, no, I'm the one who's saying sorry. I'll keep interrupting you. What is mom and dad? You had I know we haven't talked about mom all that much, but I know moms and dads, and dads having a pretty big influence here, which means mom, no matter what, is there as well. We may
Of course.
she may not be making the photo collages of this thing, but she's there. What are mom and dad saying advice at this point with econ major? I'm not really thinking about these jobs. I don't want to sit behind a desk. Why in the hell did you pick econ as a major? What's mom and dad's advice at this point?
I think my dad had a similar experience through college, in that he majored in something that he didn't truly enjoy and ended up
Uh,
getting into the family business. Well, I wasn't
mm,
about to step into a family business situation with that.
okay, I was going to ask that.
It
Yeah, yeah.
was,
Okay.
and I think I don't recall having the heart to heart conversations about what the next step is with my mother or father. I really
Okay.
don't. Um, I just remember having my own sense of, you got to figure this out, right?
Mm,
I'm not going to go home and live off of mom and dad after
mm.
graduating with a college degree.
Yeah, from Bucknell. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
so, again, at that point, I wrote letters to probably 20 schools along the East Coast and jumped on. I don't know if the NCAA job site was even a thing back then, but
For sure. No, for sure it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
so I may or may not have looked on that to see,
In,
but
in fact, that might have been the majority place to go at that point. There was no USTCA website,
sure,
and
sure.
there was no Let's Run message board. It
Right.
was a simpler time back
It's
then.
a simpler time. But in that simple time, I heard back from a couple schools, and I ended up in Philadelphia at LaSalle University.
Oh yeah.
And it's fun because we're in the process of hiring a grad assistant right now. So we just did a Zoom call with one yesterday, and I'm explaining my process to them. And like, I think it's difficult for us to expect 30 years later what we did and what we went through, and
Mm,
taking student loans out so that we could be a graduate assistant, right?
right,
They
right.
paid for grad school, but I was paying for everything else in Philadelphia,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
golly, I stayed in a real great apartment in a very scary part of town. I'd never lived in a place with bars on the windows and the doors. And coming from Bucknell, which was a pretty affluent school,
Yeah.
it was a little bit of a culture shock.
Sure.
Certainly an awesome one. It taught me a lot about life. And the coach at LaSalle set me up with a roommate who is Brian Bell, who is now the director of cross country and track and field at Syracuse.
Yes. Is
Mhm.
that right?
So Brian and I were roommates for 3 years in Philly.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess
Dude.
two and a half. He got married. Um, but so I moved to Philadelphia with Coach Torpy. Charles Torpy was the head coach there.
Okay.
Sadly, he passed away number of years back.
Okay.
Um, and you want to talk about night and day between the program I came from and the program that I'm going to. In fact, one of his favorite parts of the day was giving me a hard time because he used to call it Buck Smell because he thought that my nose was up in the air because I went there. And
Everybody's got one of those, don't
I
they?
know,
Oh
but
my
he would
God.
do it in just to mess with me a little bit
Hmm.
because he knew I'd get hot about it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But it was a great way to just learn how to coach, right? We went from 200-meter indoor track, outdoor track, anything that I needed to a school that was a small Division 1, had a 6-lane
Mhm.
outdoor track, and had a room about the size of my office area to stretch in,
Oh wow.
and a weight room, right? No indoor, no place to jump, no place to throw. And we used to drive down to Widener to actually train
Hmm.
with my jumpers and throwers back then. But it was a great transition at the time, super challenging, but a little bit of direction. But boy, I got thrown in with the jumpers, the vaulters, the throwers, the sprinters, the hurdlers. Half of those events I had never touched.
Wow.
Um, but I also had a group of really good coaches to learn from.
Yeah.
Coach Bell, Bryan Bell, you know, he and I probably at the time couldn't have been any different. He used to like to mess with me too. And to this day, we'll still talk to each other and call each other roomie.
Oh.
But he was a typical cross country guy, right? He loved going out, pounding the roads, getting, this is what a real distance runner does. And one day I went out for a run and I had headphones in, and he goes, "Why are you wearing headphones? You don't wear headphones on a long run. You listen to what's around you, Bryan." And
Wow.
from that point forward, I stopped, and I kind of actually got into running. And
That's kind of
I
cool. Yeah.
enjoyed it, you know? Um, but Coach Alexander, who was the longtime coach at Temple, he
Hmm.
taught me how to coach the hurdles and a lot more on the sprints. And another coach that was really connected to the program was Al Cantello,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
From the Naval Academy. So Al Cantello and John Ulysses both went to LaSalle,
Wow.
and they were both there at the same time. And Cantello was a former world record holder in the javelin, and he was at the Naval Academy, and he would drive up and he would help me learn how to coach the throws. Um, so I was surrounded by these great, great coaches, and I didn't realize it at the time,
Yeah,
how
sure.
legendary some of these guys really were. But
Yeah.
that built the foundation of a lot of my coaching philosophies. But I was still pretty stubborn in the jumps. Like, I know what I'm doing in the jumps. I don't need that. But
That's a great reminder. One of my favorite shows, it's off the air for years now, is the show called The Office. Did you ever watch?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah.
And one of my favorite lines, it's near the end when Andy Bernard says, "I wish someone would, I wish you knew you were in the good old days before you're out of
Oh,
the good old days." And what you just expressed there, Bryan, I think that's a great lesson for all of us that you don't, first of all, be where you are, be where your 2 feet are. Because like you're talking about, I mean, you got amazing. First of all, not only did you have amazing people and coaches around you, you had people that were pouring into you coming up from the naval. I mean, they didn't necessarily have to. They poured into you. Sometimes we have our eyes on, well, what's after grad work? Where am I going to go? And you forget what's literally right in front of you to
mhm.
take advantage of that opportunity in front of you. So sometimes it's just interesting to kind of take that step back and almost like an out of body experience of where you are and who you're around, and like, wait a minute, am I taking advantage of this guy? Am I dismissing this woman over here? Like, should I be pouring myself into them and having them pour into me more where I am right now today, a 22-year-old, 42-year-old, 62-year-old. That's a really good lesson. What are you majoring in for your grad work?
I have an MBA with concentration in marketing.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And
Um,
the marketing aspect, I thought, well, it's a little bit more interesting than finance and the other
Yeah, for
areas.
sure, for sure. How are you? And you're kind of starting the answer for this already. So just keep like double clicking into this. I'm fascinated with someone who is very event specific. So long jump, so jump specifically, and then you get thrown into well sprints and hurdles and pole vault and all this stuff. It's fascinating to me because, I know enough about coaching. I did it, for long enough and talked to coaches all day that there are so many similarities. It's not as hard as you think.
Right.
However, I also know that as a 22-year-old, you're also like, what do you mean I got to go over hurdles? That's not long jumping. Or what do you mean I got to pole vault? I knew long jumping. It's like, well, it's actually very, very similar event, guys. Just one has a pole, you got to do a few things differently. So I see both sides of it. It's like, it's not. And some of the greatest coaches that I've had the honor to, Clifford Velto, Brooks Johnson, there's another one that's escaping my mind. They had a very big philosophy that all the events are the same. It's just you move that center of mass maybe in a different way. You jump 3 times in the triple jump versus, I'm gonna say twirl around. Every shot putter is going to be mad at me for saying that, but turn around and push the shot. They're very similar, and they have a philosophy of, you're not a sprints coach, a jumps coach, a throws coach. You're a track and field coach. That's what you're supposed to be. So it's interesting. So how are you, like, taking that task head on as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old economics major jumper by trade, having to coach these new events? Is this, I guess maybe I'm asking more about, like, your attitude. Are you excited about learning to coach these new events? Are you like, they're the tertiary, because I'm really going to focus on jumps because that's what I was? What's your attitude towards learning these new events?
Well, something that, I mean, you've probably seen or learned about me for, however many years, I constantly feel like, in the coaching aspect, I feel like I had to prove something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I want to win. I want to be successful. So that was exciting to me, right? It was exciting me learning how to coach these events. And much like you said, the hurdlers, the sprinters, the jumpers, the throwers on plyo days, like, we were all together. It was a great deal, but I wanted to prove, as much of a hard time as Coach Torpy would love to give me on a daily basis, I wanted to prove that, what, in the A10, our jumpers are going to score, our sprinters are going to score, our throwers are going to score, right? Because that hadn't always happened.
Hmm.
So going in, and first year learning how to recruit, obviously was
Yeah, that's
totally.
brand new, right? Mm-hmm.
We just sit in the office and hammer the phones all night long.
Mm-hmm.
But it was exciting, and I was a little resistant to change in some of the stuff that I felt worked really well for me in college. Um, but again, learning from some of these other coaches, and Coach Torby giving me the opportunity to have that much ownership, right,
Mm-hmm.
of the programs, was big, because
Yeah.
there's plenty of positions, the one I'm sitting in as well, where I first get there, hey, this is what you're doing. And it was never that, ever. Right? Hey, I want these kids to get better. I want these numbers. Let's score some
Right.
points, figure it out.
Right.
So I think that in itself really kind of laid the foundation on how driven I was in coaching. And it just, I really wanted to be successful.
Yeah.
We had something to prove. And I'm not just there just to kind of get an education and figure things out. Like, I want to be good at what I'm doing. If you're not working hard at what you are doing in that moment in time, what's the point of even doing it?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So everything we had was flowed into that. And I was 22 years old, single, living in Philadelphia, living the great life. Didn't have a dime to my name, and I love telling my kids the story. I'm like, guys, when I got out of college, I was eating a can of vegetables and a piece of chicken at night if I was lucky, right? Like, this is where Dad came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a big dip after college, and then um, but that's really kind of what developed, I guess, the work ethic, and
Yeah.
really, I started to really enjoy coaching, right, at that point. And having, one of the things that was also really difficult at that time was having that separation. I'm 22 years old coaching 22-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
That was tricky. And I was in some grad classes with kids that were still competing.
Oh, right.
That was awkward, especially
Yeah.
more than I did in one of these courses. Um, but having that separation was something that was really pushed in. And the other
Could,
name,
could could you imagine? I love this topic here. Every time it's available, I will have this topic. Can you imagine? So I love that you were conscious of that. Can you imagine if you would have done grad work at Bucknell? So on the way I always
oh,
describe it is, right. The way I always describe it is, on Friday, your teammate Bryan, you're hanging out, you're playing Xbox at night. Not when we were that young, but your boys, your friends. And then on Monday, your coach Shiding, there has to be a separation to do it right. I have
right.
yet to say anybody disagree with me on that.
Mhm.
And I'm always interested. I think it should be a rule that you cannot GA at the place you undergrad. I just don't see how it can be done correctly. And I'm talking about, I've talked to some of the most choir boy and choir girls of all choir boys and girls, and I'm still like, I can't believe it was 100% separated, done correctly. I just can't, I can't believe it.
Well, I certainly don't fall into the choir boy section right there. But I agree with you. It would have
Yeah.
been too challenging because I certainly didn't do things the way I should have in college. And again, it's one of those things where I think part of my drive in coaching is to try to help these student athletes not make the same ignorant decisions that I made when I was in
Right.
college.
Right.
I think, man, I really should have or could have been significantly better,
Mhm.
but X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But having that separation was something that Joe Clem was my sprint coach for 4 years
Hmm.
at Bucknell, and he's now at UPenn.
Hmm.
He's the associate director at UPenn,
Yep.
and
Good dude.
he's another one that very integral in this journey with even to this day.
I didn't know you knew
Um,
Joe. He's a good dude. I like him.
he's a fantastic guy, and he was my only Coach Gold and Coach Clem were my only consistent coaches in college. I had three jumps coaches over 4 years,
Oh, wow.
and that was challenging in and of its own. Luckily, the one I had for my last year was the most successful and worked the best with me.
Well, I had, I think it was David Self at Sam Houston had a similar experience. It was like 4 years, four different coaches, and I was like, man, like that had to be so hard. And he expressed, yeah, for sure. Like if I'd had my choice, I would have taken the same coach. I think he said even like, his third coach or whatever, I would have had them all 4 years or whatever. He goes, Mike, when I became a coach, I then, as I look back, again, experience in 2020 and all that kind of stuff, I had four different examples, not all great examples, by the way, but like I had some examples like, oh, don't do that. Oh yeah, do that. And I
Of
liked what
course,
she
yeah.
did. So can you look back now and again, I think you would have chosen if you'd had the choice as a freshman, like, hey, the same coach all 4 years or three coaches over the 4 years, you'd have chosen the same coach. Consistency is huge in our sport. So I get
Right.
that. But now can you look back and see those different coaches and be like, oh, I have a little bit of influence from each one of them.
I think two of them. The second one not so much. And
Yeah. Well, no,
uh,
but you haven't. Okay, I'm kind of getting vibes that maybe the second one wasn't really copacetic with you, but you may not have positive influence.
right, but what I
There
didn't.
can be negative influence. That's learning what not to do from someone. That's a great. Thank God you would have that lesson because not you would repeat those things. So
Right.
that's okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And ironically, the coach that recruited me on the jump side, she left before I even got there.
yeah.
So
Jeez,
somebody recruited me. Then I had three different coaches.
that's got to be so
But
tough. Ugh.
it was
Yeah.
challenging. You rolled the punches. You didn't know any better. You showed up,
Right.
and that was your coach, and you listened to your coach, right?
Hmm.
And you did
Hmm.
what your coach asked you to do to your best of your ability.
Hmm.
When we're going back to the separation piece,
Yeah.
it's one thing that Joe said to me, like make sure you separate yourself from the athletes.
Absolutely.
Very easy to fall into, hey, that this so and so house is getting together this weekend. Coach, why don't you come hang out? You're our age.
Yep.
And it was tough, but luckily I had some friends from college that lived in the Philly area, so I separated myself
Oh,
enough
good,
from
good,
them.
good, good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but it was, I think that was, yeah, really important in it, and that's what I try to look for. And it's tough as a coach because you get
Yeah.
really close to certain athletes, like that's my guy, that's my girl, I can count on them. And to this day, you always have that one or two athlete like, hey, that's my guy, I can count on them to do this. But there always has to be that level of separation.
Absolutely.
And my level of separation typically comes with a really straight face and sunglasses, so you never know what I'm thinking, and I'm darkly sarcastic. Um, so they're all kind of scared a little bit, but so yeah, we did the 3 year stint
Yeah.
um, at LaSalle, and at the end of it, kind of the same old thing, right? I was going through looking at some programs. I interviewed with a couple of really good companies
Uh,
that would have been.
okay, I was going to ask that. So you're not necessarily after that grad program. You're not like I love how you just said that. And I cut you off there. You're not like okay, yep, I'm a track coach. You're still interviewing for
I'm still not
non-coaching
sold.
jobs.
I'm not sold.
Wow.
So I interviewed with a couple, companies that would have been fine, would have been great, right?
What kind of
But then,
jobs? Marketing jobs or econ jobs or
yeah,
what?
marketing, again, sales positions.
Hmm.
There was one sales position with an insurance company. There's another one I interviewed with Sun Microsystems, and
Oh, wow.
there's a bunch of different things.
Hmm.
But again, none of it really. It still kind of came back to the whole, man, I don't want to sit behind a desk.
Hmm.
So let's go ahead and just try this on, see what happens. I interviewed for every job on the NCA site. For every single job I put my name in for. It didn't
Okay.
matter if it was Harvard or if it was some school I had never heard of, which
Sure.
the school that came through was a school that I had never heard of, Missouri-Rolla.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm in a city of 5 million. I get this phone call from Sarah Moore. This is Sarah from Missouri-Rolla, and I said, oh, I thought it was called Rolla. And she says, no, we have
She
your,
goes, I hear that a lot.
yeah, I'm sure. She says, we got your information. We'd love to bring you out for an interview. Okay, this is great, right? And
Now
so
you're a self-described homebody. How is that jiving with this? 'Cause that's way
so
far.
in the process of from college to grad school, living in Philadelphia, I became a lot more independent.
Okay, cool.
And like
You
the
grew.
visits home became less frequent, things like that, which
Very cool.
still very close to my father, still very close to mom. And
Hmm.
flipping back, you made the comment about mom was always behind the scenes. Mom always had a fold-up chair sitting on the balcony right above the long jump pit, reading a book, looking up when I would jump, and then reading her book again.
That's such a cool picture,
So
dude.
consistent with that. Again, every college track meet she could get to,
Wow.
right?
That's so
So
cool.
back to the Rolla. So I went out to Rolla for an interview, and she said, "Jump on the highway, go south on 44. I guess it would have been west on 44 from St. Louis." And she says, "You'll know you're in Rolla when you see the buildings that are more than 20 stories high." And I thought she was kidding, right? I thought she was joking. So I jump. I'd never been to the Midwest before, right? And I'm coming from Philadelphia. Everything's more than 20 stories, right? I jump on the highway in my little rental car and I drive down, and lo and behold, here's the dorms that are more than 15, 20 stories, whatever they might be. They were taller than a normal building, and it was Rolla, right? So I pulled off, and
Oh my
uh,
gosh.
it was again a totally different environment, but similar in some ways, right? So Bucknell was very academic minded, LaSalle very academic minded.
Hmm. Hmm.
Both of them small mid-major Division I schools.
Hmm.
So I went out to Rolla, which was a Division II school, and the only knowledge I had of Division II at that point were the PSAC schools, right?
Hmm.
And I had gotten to know some of those coaches really, really well through the years. Um, so I went out there, and I'd never heard of this MIAA conference, the Major.
Hmm.
No idea what they were talking about. And
That's funny.
in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, these guys aren't going to be any good, And I didn't, again, ignorance and hubris, I guess. I was pretty confident dude coming in. But I got there, had a great interview with Sarah, and the school was different and similar, and meaning, engineering school, very high academics,
Big.
athletics, kind of, you were on the other side of the street than the academic side.
Hmm.
So just like every school has its challenges, that you had to be a student first, athlete second. Okay. And that was very much the attitude of the student athletes there. Okay. Well, I was out visiting Dave out in California, and the next week, and I got a phone call from Sarah, and she says, "We'd like to offer you the job." Um, and I still remember, actually, it was prior to Sarah calling me, Sterling Martin, who's now at
Yeah.
Alabama. He was the head coach at Rolla for 6 years while I was there.
Right.
He was longer than 6 years, but the six I was there. He called me up, and I was sitting in the airport after my interview, and all he said to me was, "Bryan, can you coach the pole vault?" And of course, I really was not a good pole vault coach. And I said, "Sure, I can. I'm the best pole vault coach you're going to find." And he says, "Am I going to have to babysit you?" I said, "No, you don't have to babysit me. I promise you that." He says, "Okay, sounds good. Thanks." Click. Then Sarah calls me a day later, and she offers me the job. Right. So that was my interview with Sterling.
Wow.
And so I just made that decision. Like, it's a leap of faith. I'm going to drive out, and man, I'm actually going to get a full-time paycheck, holy cow, I'm
Oh,
not living
right.
off loans for the
Yeah.
first time in my life. Wow, I get to actually pay off loans and paying my own, so it was, you know, it was awesome, right? And I have a job, a full-time track job. I was super excited about
That's
it.
cool.
Sterling and I mean, we hit it off,
Good
right?
dude.
Good old buddies. And, he was from St. Louis area and I was from Philadelphia. So we got to talking and mess with each other all the time. Just a great combination, right?
That's
We really
cool.
worked well together. Now, there were two of us for the whole team, and that was it, which at the time wasn't that uncommon. Certainly now it's uncommon. But I remember going into the conference, and some of my first conversations with the kids were very challenging, right?
Hmm.
And the way that they had been, I guess, not necessarily coached, but treated was it is academics, academics, academics. If you have time for track, then you go to practice.
Mm.
And changing that culture was a big challenge. Some of the kids were really up for it. They really wanted to change quickly. And some of them were so resistant that they went to the athletics director and felt that I was too hard on them and keeping them accountable for coming to practice.
Wow.
But I fell into a great situation. I had three or four pretty darn talented athletes. I had a pole vaulter named J.R. Scola who taught me as much about pole vaulting as that I tried to help him with. Right. And he was a multiple time All American at the time, which is why Sterling said, "Hey, can you coach vault?"
Right, right, right.
So I learned so much through him. He did end up getting a little bit better, thankfully. But that's what really kickstarted my journey into vaulting, which has
Huh,
turned into a pretty good journey, I would think.
for sure.
Um, but trying to change the mindset of an entire team of, hey, you can do both. Where
Hmm.
I went to college, it was pretty tough as well, but we had a good balance between the two, and you can do it as well. Again,
Yeah, you had a great background. That's a great point. It's not like
yeah,
you went to athletic U. You went to a highly academic school first and then
sure,
athletic. So yeah, you got a good background on this and experience.
right. And I still remember one of the first conversations when we were in college. We had to dress up for every road trip.
Hmm.
It was khakis, shirt and tie. Some kids wore, a sports coat, and every away trip you got on the bus, if it wasn't just a day trip, we were dressed up. And
Right.
I remember making that comment to the team, and one of the girls stood up and says, "I only own jeans. I am not doing that." And I said, "It's okay. I'm not asking you to do that thing. This is my background, right?" But we really created a lot of more accountability with them. And at the time, Rolla's, the program pretty low numbers and struggling a
Hmm.
little bit in the MIAA, which I grew to learn really quickly was by far the most powerful conference in the
Oh yeah.
and it was really eye-opening for me because I'd never heard of them and so much stronger than even a number of the
Hmm.
smaller, mid-major D1s that I had been used to seeing.
Right.
Um, so again, I'm put in a position where I felt like I had to prove myself. We're in a team that was consistently finishing, maybe lower third in the conference. Within 3 years, we were third in the conference in the MIAA. And we had recruited good kids, and I had developed a number of the kids that I had inherited, which were fantastic, and they developed into such great team leaders.
Hmm.
And again, it's those are the kids that you still lean on to this day. One of them ended up being a three-time Olympian and Olympic finalist long jumper, Tyrone. And when I inherited him, he was a 21-9 long jumper from Chicago, and
Wow.
with very little accountability. And he's going to listen to this and he's going to bust my chops for it. And he'll admit that I'm right. Um,
Is that
but
right, Tyrone? Is he right? Okay.
but and Roderick and Jamie and Bryan and like kids that developed this really strong leadership ability and pulled the others along.
Yeah.
They were the ones that were hungry for competition that could really get the mindset changed. Um, but it was a challenge, and I had to be really strict with them. The Tyrone specifically notorious for being late for practice every day and having some kind of excuse. And he'd worked his
Hmm.
way through college, so oftentimes it was because he was late. But I remember climbing a fence, an 8-foot fence that used to go around because he would have his car in the parking lot doing donuts. And I remember climbing a fence and chasing him down in the parking lot. And
No.
um, one day he showed up late, and I said, Tyrone, if you show up late again, you're going to be suspended from the program. And lo and behold, he showed up late again. So we suspended him for 2 weeks from the program.
Oof.
And during that time, basically said, okay, you can come back, but you got to come back and you're either all in. And if you have any doubt, you don't come back. 2 weeks later, he showed up. The rest is history. He was a 26-foot long jumper in college. And
Wow.
I was lucky enough to go all over the world with him to the world championships. And he still has the Bermuda national record. And he married Sandy Morris, right? And so there's a cool little
Right.
connection there with the
Right.
vault
That's
world.
right. That's right.
Um,
That's right.
but and then, some of those guys really, again, developed a huge base for me that for that program that
Do
I
you
didn't
think
have to press as hard on them because I had great leaders through them.
do you think for a guy like Tyrone, you know, who's gone on to be extremely successful, not yes, athletically, professionally, he's very successful, and obviously, you know, married to Sandy, who's having a lot of continued success. Do you think, you know, you're dealing with 19, 20-year-old, maybe 21-year-old Tyrone? Do you think he like why did the suspension have such an effect on him? Do you think he was testing the coaching staff of like, let's see how serious you guys really are? If I'm late one more time, yeah, right, I bet they won't. And then he shows up late, and then you actually followed through and said, all right, you're gone for 2 weeks. Do you think that was the kind of
Well,
reason for the wake up call, or
I think he was testing the waters, but
yeah?
I also think he has always been hungry for competition. He's always been hungry for somebody to give him that chance, right? And he and I gelled really well after that. Like really, really well after
Mm,
that. And he'll often tell the stories like when he was growing up, like his coaches didn't give him a chance to long jump, and he knew he was a really good jumper. And
hmm,
um, he actually went to Rolla to play football and do track. And if you look at
okay.
this poor guy, his nickname is Sticks because his ankles are the size of my forearms. But um, giving him that opportunity for somebody to truly buy into him
Mm,
was, I think, what he was looking for, right?
yeah.
And we developed a great relationship. And like you said, just moving on from that, he got married a number of years back, but watching his progression from college to professional to his work life and being successful in his work life and how well spoken he is, and just he got things figured out, right?
Mm,
He's just really successful in all aspects. And I like to think I had a small part
mm,
in
mm,
that, but right, he was hungry for someone to pay
yeah.
attention to, right,
Yeah.
and give him that shot. But Rolla was just like any other place, right? We had awesome parts to it, and we had challenges, right?
Mm,
But we were pretty successful in the program. And again, once that initial group of kids that I inherited kind of turned into leaders, we started developing a little bit more leadership, a little bit more leadership,
mm-hmm.
a little more success. Program recruited, we had some more success, and um, I was lucky enough that Sterling fought tooth and nail for everything that we had.
Mm-hmm.
That's what track coaches' jobs are, right? We're best friends with all athletics directors and head trainers. That's
Yeah, you better be.
he fought for everything that we had and what I needed to be successful. Right? We didn't have an indoor place to pole vault my first 2 or 3 years there. So we had the idea, okay, let's drop a box underneath where one of the curtain drops in the rec center. It only gives us 80 feet of runway, but we could develop that event.
All right.
We fought and
Huh.
fought and fought. We finally got
That's
it, and
interesting.
that's one of the events that really blew up for me
All right.
right while we were there.
Huh.
Uh, so it was a great trip, but boy, I'll tell you, 5 million population to 12,000 was a big one. I like to tell the story. I first week of work at Rolla, I went to they had one gym in town. It was called the Center, right? It was a rec center with some fields and stuff around it, but they had a gym in there. And I remember I went to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning because it was before everything, and I worked out, went home, showered, got to work at 8:30. And I remember Sarah Moore, she was the assistant AD at the time, the one that hired me, walked into my office and said, "So I heard you worked out this morning at 6 o'clock." I thought, what have I gotten into? So the true definition of a small town. You knew everybody, but it was a perfect spot for me in my life because,
Yeah.
you know, college to grad school in Philadelphia, boy, I mean, 22 to 25 years and year old in Philadelphia, we had a lot of fun on the weekends with the buddies, right? But it was the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Made such a significant turn in my life. And, in that first year that I was at Rolla, I actually met my wife at a track meet in Lawrence. She was coaching for Pitt State.
Ha!
She got her undergrad at Southern. She lived in Joplin, and she was coaching at Pittsburgh State as a grad assistant.
No way.
We were at a meet at KU, and she actually came up to me. At least that's how I remember it. She came to me, but and we just got to talking about the athletes because she competed for Southern and she competed against Rolla.
Oh, right.
Didn't know where the team was, and so we just got to talking about some of the athletes that she actually competed against that had
Yeah.
gotten a lot better. So that's kind of what sparked it. And then I saw her the next weekend at a meet at Central Missouri.
Right.
She was coaching her kids, so I meandered over and we got to talking a little bit. And I found out she lived in Joplin. I said, "Wow, we're going to be in Joplin next weekend for a track meet. How ironic. Where are you going to take me to dinner?" And
Did
the
you
rest is
did you
history.
really say that?
Oh, I sure did.
I
Oh, yeah.
love that. This is your best recruiting job.
Oh, my goodness. You better believe it. She's the best part
Wow.
of it for sure.
So for the sake of time, let's get some cursory questions. How many years at Rolla?
6 years at Rolla.
6 years at Rolla. Where do you go? Do you go from there to Missouri Southern?
Yep. So
Okay.
6 years. My last year, it was, I think every coach kind of reaches a time span, right? At a university and a relationship with coaches. I was growing up. I wanted to have more say, more stake in the
Mm-hmm.
game. And
Mm-hmm.
it was time for me to kind of move on. And that summer, I got a phone call from Coach Tom Rutledge,
Tom, yeah.
legend in the sport. And I had seen him at different meets and, some good conversations, some not so awesome
Sure.
conversations, because, Tom was a heck of a coach and very passionate.
Yeah.
Called me up and said, I'm looking for somebody to come in. I'm going to retire in a number of years, and your pole vaulters are as good as mine. So I want to talk to you.
He's big vault, right? Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and I ended up here.
So go back to Roller real quick. Are you doing, where are you at in coaching education at all? And I kind of think about coaching education in two forms, formal and informal. Both of them are very important. You've expressed a lot of what I'd call informal coaching
Mhm.
education, working with Dave and some of the coaches that poured into you at LaSalle, and formal being what we, more commonly known at USATF level one, level two, maybe USTF CCCA Academy was going on at this point, probably maybe just getting started when you're at
Just getting
Rolla.
started, maybe.
Altus probably wasn't around, but what are you doing? Are you doing any formal? Do you have any kind of formalized informal, meaning like, do you have a standing weekly call with Dave or something like that? Where are you at in coaching education realm?
No, and the only when I was at Rolla, the only formal I did was a level one.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
went up to Truman, Sterling took me up there, and to be honest, I
Yeah.
was ignorant to it. I didn't even know that these existed.
Yeah.
Uh, so he took me up. We did a level one,
Yeah.
two
I taught
programs.
that. I taught that one year.
Yeah.
I wasn't your teacher, was I?
No,
It always amazes me when somebody goes, "Yeah, you taught me." I'm like, "Holy crap! Well, you've done a
you were.
lot better. You've
Oh,
done so much better since then." But I did. I remember Truman. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was cool. Yeah.
and honestly, I would say that the overwhelming majority of coaching philosophy or whatever you want to call it would be from informal training,
Yeah. Have
right?
you appreciate that? You earlier you said this is when you were time at LaSalle that you're learning all these new events. So you're very open. You're almost, in my terms, I'd call it sponge-like. You're listening and playing around what works, what doesn't work, etc. But you made a comment that I kind of put a pin in. I was going to come back to, but when it came to, and I can't remember if you said jumps or long jump, so I'm just going to use the word long jump. But when it comes to long jump, I what I was doing was what I was doing.
Hmm.
Uh, take that statement that you made going up to now we're going to go to Missouri Southern. Did that change at all? Did you open to listen? Did you open up to listening to other people and styles and
Yeah,
techniques and thoughts,
certainly.
or are you still, man? I am. Brian's way of doing long jump is the way we do long jump.
I'm 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 a stubborn human being. I
Hmm.
think anybody who knows me would tell you that. But let me take back the informal. I went to. I would always go up to the Missouri high school coaches
Hmm.
clinic.
Hmm.
Right. It was either to do a couple speaking engagements, but there's a number of times where there have been fantastic speakers. Right. Carlos
Absolutely.
there, and Michael Powell was there, and
Mm,
I think the one year Willie Banks was there.
dude.
And I love learning from those guys, right? And if I saw what I would consider a successful coach, I have no problem talking to those
Hmm.
guys. But yeah, so slowly but surely, I opened up my
Yeah.
book to try to start learning a little bit more about those events, which
Yeah.
which has helped a lot.
Yeah.
And
And you've been successful at them. It's not like when I hear that kind of statement, I'm not necessarily like, I don't think of that person and be like, wow, man, you really don't know anything if you just listen to others. It's more of like, okay, if you've been successful with your style, that's cool. So how do you accentuate what you're doing? What are some things that maybe you're not doing enough of, or what's something you're doing? It's like, man, it really doesn't help. So you could actually drop that. And the only way to do that is to learn from others who are successful in the event. So yeah, that's good.
um, we moved then from from that we came up to Southern, and
Hmm.
when Tom hired me for Southern, I was the men's sprint and jumps coach.
Hmm.
Okay, so Tom worked with the distance and the throwers. He worked with men and women throwers. I worked with the men and women jumpers. Coach Vavra was the head women's coach. She worked with
Hmm.
their sprinters, distance, and
Yeah,
Coach
that's
Burnham, the staple of all Missouri Southern's history, it seems, was working with distance on both sides. Tom retired 4 years after I got here. I took over the men's program, hired Coach Allen, which was one of the best hires I ever made. Um, 3 years, 2 or 3 years after that, Coach Vavra retired, and we then combined programs completely. So we still had separate men, women head coaches. When Patty retired, we combined, hired sprint coach, and then obviously Burnham's still with us.
how I'm always amazed at, and it seems like it's getting less and less uh, separate men and women's programs. Although I don't know that I necessarily agree that we're combining them either, because I really do like to think of our sports as separate, right? Like there in almost every school, there's a men's tennis coach and a women's tennis coach. They're very rarely the same tennis coach coaches both, and you can take that to golf and things like that. But in our sport, it's like no, you coach, yeah, you coach both, and so we tend to meld, I think, our sport too much sometimes. Like we don't always treat ourselves as three sports: cross, indoor, outdoor. And I think that's a mistake sometimes. We do it when it suits the school, when it points towards the championship cup and
Of course. Yeah.
APRs and Title Nines and things like that. But then we give you one budget. That's like, so I sometimes like to separate it out. But what I'm curious about is how did you, uh, you mentioned the women's coach, and I shame on me. I tend to forget about her. I just knew Tom when I coached at the JUCO and went over to Missouri Southern so much, and then I recruited a really really good vaulter and who ended up transferring to Missouri Southern after I left. So him and Kyle became good friends, and then of course
Mm.
now I know Kyle very well and all that kind of good stuff. But uh, she was there for a long time and did a really really good job. How did you two cohabitate? Meaning, uh, she's been at Missouri Southern for a long time. She's the head coach of the women's program. Tom, who had been there for a long time, retires, and here's this. You were still young at that point. Here's this young guy. He's not from right. He's a New Englander. What does this guy know? He's a
Oh
little bit of
yeah.
an outsider. How did you guys? Because you're still at a school where I'm assuming there were still a lot of shared resources, meaning this, you all took the same buses to the meet. You probably all had the same schedule. I'm assuming, and maybe there were some minor differences, but I'm doing a lot of assumptions here. But how did you guys like? And knowing that for right or wrong, there is a probably not right or wrong, probably wrong. There's a difference of men's sports versus women's sports. So, but she's the captain. She's been there longer than you. So how did that all work out with you being the new head
It
coach?
was it was a very steep learning curve for me. Um, both programs super successful in the MIAA, from cross to indoor to
Right,
outdoor, for the history of their programs.
right.
So I was excited to come in and be a part of that, right? And Southern's indoor track was the go-to
Yeah,
indoor
yeah,
track
absolutely.
forever, right? And hopefully we can bring that back now that it's brand new surface.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
but when I came in, it was made very clear to me, you are a men's assistant coach. Now I worked with the female jumpers, and Patty kind of slowly worked those into the coaching, and especially with the vault, because Tom coached the women vaulters as well. I think Patty loves coaching the jumps, so the horizontal jumps and the high jumps. So that part of it was a challenge. I needed to make sure that
Yeah.
when I did start working with them, that I was doing what she wanted. But Patty was so open to allowing me to coach the girls.
Okay.
Um, and when I say they're separate programs, yeah, it traveled together for the most part, went to most of the same meets. It was more from a budget team meeting
Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah.
How how Patty dealt with the women was very different than how Tom dealt with the guys. And
Hmm.
being the go between, it took some while. It took a while to figure
It's
that.
tough. That's why I asked. I was like, this,
Yeah,
I just, there's no way that this was utopia and everybody just meshed together. And, it always, it's like there has to, and I'm not digging for, when I say my next statement was going to be, there had to have been some conflicts. I'm not digging for conflicts,
yeah,
by the way. I'm just, my thing is here, okay, how do we help people who are going to be in the same situation next year, tomorrow, right
sure,
now?
sure.
How do they navigate? How do you drop some of your ego? Like when you talked about Betty liked coaching the jumpers, and here you are, you're jumps coach and very
Yeah.
successful.
Well,
How do you like? Okay, Betty, you like to do this? Okay, I can throw that in there. You like that component? Like how do you drop your bad ego so that the team continues to move forward? Right.
and that was a challenge because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
my confidence level was pretty darn high,
Sure.
or
Sure.
is pretty darn high. And so I walked into, a situation with Tom's office, super successful, one of the, best coaches in the MIAA history and legendary in the sport in his own
Right.
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 So when I wanted to do certain things, sometimes it would come down to you're going to do these instead. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to prove a little bit more to Tom, I think, that I knew what I was doing, that I could
Sure.
coach those kids. And he slowly but surely, that it was pretty much free reign after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with Patty, I think it was more just, a day a week, two
Mm-hmm.
days a week, just let's see how this thing's working. So I only actually, when Patty was here, I only worked with the jumpers on the technical aspect of jumping. So that was also a challenge because on the guys, I know exactly what we were doing conditioning wise, strength training wise, and I was in control of all of that,
Right.
where theirs was a lot different,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was tough to learn, but yeah, you got to check your ego because if you're coming into a situation where you got two head coaches, they're both very successful. I had to learn from both of them, and I will say that in my earlier years, I leaned on Kyle a lot,
Is that right?
right? And over at Pitt, and the irony is Kyle went to Rolla when I left.
Oh my
Okay,
God, that's right.
I came down to Southern, and Kyle went from Johnson County over to
Oh
S&T, right? So
man, that's
Rolla turned into S&T. So we were both kind of leaning on each other, Kyle on me on, hey, what's going on here? How do we deal with this situation? Me on the, hey, I this is what I'd like to do, but I'm kind of running into some walls with, with your dad. And so we would go back and forth constantly. We were on the phone two, three times a week, right?
Yeah.
And our relationship got very, very strong.
Yeah.
And now obviously he's over at Pittsburgh doing
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so
That's
I
interesting.
had to lean on a lot of other people to try to figure that one out.
Yeah. 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 So usually I ask this question when you become first time head coach, but I think I'm going to have you fast forward to when you became the director, the coach of both men and women, because is it safe to assume that's when things changed a lot? And what I mean by that is you have more control over the program at that point.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So my favorite question to ask every new head coach is, as assistant coaches, we get to learn from head coaches and we get to see other head coaches of other programs, and we start thinking it's easy for us to pick and judge of what we think are mistakes from others and go, well, I would never do that. Here's how I would do it. And we it's easy for us to get caught up into thinking like when I become a head coach, I'm going to be a genius because I'm ready. I'm going to do it better and different than everybody else. So my favorite question, and it's kind of a two-parter. It's the same question, just flip it around a little bit. When you became the director, as you're getting ready to sit in that big seat of the entire program, first one in program history as well, because I know they've been separate throughout the whole time. So you're pioneer something new for this school as well. What did you think was going to be easy but ended up being actually a little bit harder. And what I mean by that is you think about all the things that you have to do as a head coach, scheduling, equipment, budgeting, recruiting, alumni. Maybe you now sit on committees to hire the next basketball coach. There's so much more that goes on being the head coach that, coaching is actually maybe this much of it sometimes, unfortunately. What did you think? Like, oh, it's gonna be easy to change the schedule. That'll be easy, and it ended up being maybe tougher. And I just use scheduling as an example. What did you think was going to be easy, and maybe you had to, and you're better at it now because you continue to get better. But what did you maybe struggle with that you thought was going to be easy?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Um, you're welcome. Um, so I'll kind of preface this with my goal when we took over the program, and always had when I was the men's head coach, and we hired Coach Allen, and we I can't say hired Jamie, but transitioned Jamie into the head distance coach. My goal has always been to let my coaches coach.
Mm.
Right? I'm okay, and I've said my whole life I don't want to sit behind a desk. I find myself sitting behind a desk more now, but it's at least something that I love to do. Right?
Right, right, right.
My goal has always been to let my coaches coach. And I think that's harder. It's easier said than done because,
Mm.
when it comes to managing people and managing the kids and how they coach and how they're treating the kids may be very different than mine, but it's certainly a benefit to the student athlete in a different way. Trying to figure out how to mesh,
Yep,
one style with the other,
yep,
has been a challenge. And in my opinion, trying to mentor and trying to help somebody
yep.
oftentimes when they don't feel like they want help or
Yeah.
need help.
And
Uh,
something that we do very, very poorly. You have received, I'm going to go on a limb here, and I bet I could do this with every college and high school track and field coach, head coaches. You have received zero training on staff management, how to hire, how to fire, how to evaluate. It's always like, oh, you're the head coach now, good, go hire a coach. And it's like, well, what do you mean? I mean, like I think about it now, and I didn't think about this when I was a coach, by the way, but now that I'm in the, corporate world and, higher evaluation, things like that, like, oh, there's training of like what to look for, how to strip your biases out to find the right person that would fit on the team, things like that. Like we do training for that stuff. And I'm like, oh, as coaches, you're just given the keys and told to go hire and figure out your staff. And by the way, if there's trouble in staff, you're in trouble with your AD, not them. So you just get no training, but expected to be perfect on this.
we've got, and to that point, I got tremendously lucky with two of our hires. Obviously, Coach Allen, and that's a funny
Mhm.
story on how he was hired, but he's developed into one of the best throws coaches in the country,
Yeah,
hands
no
down.
doubt, no doubt. He
And
better be in that conference, by the way.
well, he was promoted to associate head coach last year because he
Nice.
deserves it,
Yes.
and he's a tremendous coach. And
Yeah.
his coaching philosophy and his drive and his dedication and his um just wanting to be successful, like, couldn't be more evident. Right? Couldn't be more evident. His personality and mine are different in many ways, so that's a challenge for me at
Hmm.
times, just like it would be for him. And I got really lucky with my second sprint coach hire. My first sprint coach hire interviewed fantastic, and she's super successful on the East Coast now, and she's doing a great thing, but didn't work great for our program. And
Hmm.
that was a situation where she had another offer, which was perfect timing for us as well.
Hmm.
We hired, like my sprint coach, and he's a technician. And one thing I would say with the four coaches we have on staff, Jamie's been here 36 years. Think about that concept. 36.
Yeah.
Coach Allen, he's beginning his 13th year. I'm beginning my 17th year. Jason's beginning his ninth year.
Wow.
Consistency in coaching, and we mesh and gel really well together. And now to say that there's not some hot spots every now and then,
Yeah.
obviously it would be a lie. But my goal has always been, right, like, I'll take one for the team, right? If I only have four jumpers for the whole year, but we got 30 throwers, 30 sprinters, 20 discs, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
okay with that because I got to spend a little bit more time doing the dirty work behind the scenes. And I think being that numbers guy and that numbers nerd behind the scenes has really helped
Hmm.
in the head coach position because learning to manage a lot when you're given a little is always a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
Uh, but
So
it's been a good ride.
The second question is just the reverse of that. What is something as you took over the director job, program over head coach over both men's and women's programs? What was something that maybe you thought was going to be a little bit harder or challenging for you? Maybe you're like, oh man, I better make sure I have Tom on speed dial. I got to figure out how to do this. But when you actually got in the seat and started doing it, you're like, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it might be.
I have a hard time checking my ego with administration.
Mm,
And ego may not be the right word for it. And I have a great relationship with them, but it takes a while to understand where I'm coming from, right? So the initial, my initial impact or my initial meeting with people often kind of goes, they'll leave the meeting, man, Shiding's really a piece of work.
hmm,
And you ask some of my best friends to this day in their initial meeting with me, it's like, man, that guy's a real, you know what?
mm-hmm.
Um, ultimately, yeah, we won't get into my year-end reviews. Ultimately, everything I'm doing for the student athlete, right?
Right.
Every fight that I'm fighting, every battle I'm battling, every time I'm in a bad spot with somebody on campus, it's because I'm trying to fight for the betterment of the student athlete experience,
Right.
and it is a challenge. It is a big challenge for me. As one of my friends so eloquently put it last week, I may not be the best people person when initially with certain people, and if I have my mind set on what is right, what is just, what should be happening, it's really difficult for me to stray from that.
Hmm.
I will fight tooth and nail to try to get to that point. Some of which are well out of reach, but I want to get things done to help those kids, and it's hard for me to put things on the back shelf and wait.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but
Yeah, it's great. And what's interesting to me that is with that, and I have a unique perspective. I'm not sure anybody, and this almost take a step back. Ego is not bad. Bad ego is bad. And so this might be a bad ego for me when I say this statement. I'm not sure there's anybody else out there that has interviewed more track and field coaches in this long form, like not just 20 minutes at a time.
sure.
And by the way, I'm not poo-pooing podcasts and interviews that are 20 minutes because there's a lot of value in those as well, but really going deep. So I really, if you're a longtime listener, we get into the weeds sometimes of these. And what we're really just trying to figure out is lessons learned and things like that who have made the person. That's why we spend a lot of time on like their high school and college aspect, because that tells us some things that we learn later on in their lives, right?
Mhm. Sure.
And so, what's interesting to me about what you said and how you said that was a key part of that, and it's extremely, extremely hard, is self-awareness. You started those by stating, a lot of people will tell you, first time meeting with me, not so great, blah, blah, blah. Like you have the self-awareness of that. So you can have grace for others when someone gets mad at you and you're like, oh yeah, we're still early. You're going to learn more about me. And that, you think I'm doing this because it's an ego that I want to be, looked at as the king poobah or whatever. But in reality, it's like, no, I want Sally to be able to have what she needs to have a
Yes.
great experience. And
Sure.
Lonnie over here, yada, yada. So you have some self-awareness of that, and that allows you to navigate a little bit better than just simply the bad ego part would be like, oh, I'm not an asshole, you are, because you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, or because I think it's this way. That's a whole different aspect. Those are
Well,
hard people to work with.
mhm.
People who have self-awareness and say, hey, I may not be coming off real well here, but let me tell you the reasoning behind why I'm asking for this or saying that we need to have this is because yada 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 yada. Those are two different people to work with and work for. Well, one I can get along with, and we don't have to agree on everything. We can have disagreements, but we can still move forward. The other, it's like, oh, I'm keeping my resume polished. Or if I'm your superior, that guy better keep his resume polished
Right.
because he's going to be needing it. So I love, like, a big key to that example that you gave is the self-awareness piece of it. And because it's so hard, and it should be easier because it's us, but sometimes they're called blind spots for a reason. We don't see
Right.
them.
Right. Right.
We need others. So speaking of that, because I use that blind spot example word there, to learn that, to have that self-awareness, have has someone else, like, how did you find that blind spot? Because maybe early in your life, when we're younger, we sometimes have more bad ego than we do a little bit later. Did your now wife, did she point it out? Did you have a mentor, an administrator that sat down and said, "Look, man, you can go very far in this athletic world, but you've got to figure this." Like, how did you? Where did the self-awareness come from?
I mean, my wife points it out daily to me.
Daily.
She reminds me. So my wife she's an instructor here on campus as well. So she's just
Nice.
right up the hall from me, which is fantastic. But she likes to remind me that I may or may not have a bit of a that's what I'm looking for here. People know me in a certain way, I suppose.
Reputation. Yeah.
Yeah, reputation. There you go. Uh, I think a lot of it, I was aware of it when I was in college, right? I was aware of it when I started coaching early. I think just the positions that I'm in have come with a lot different expectations and higher
Yeah.
expectations. And,
Yeah.
as you build programs, you
That's a great
tend
point.
to fight even more, right?
Yeah.
The program that we've built has been very successful in the last 4 or 5 years. So
Yeah.
I want to be I I want our program to be treated as such,
Yeah.
right? So I'm the spokesperson for the program. I'm the backbone of this program. We have a 15-year-old starting 10th grade next week, and I have a little dude starting 6th grade, and this is what our family has made home.
Right.
A life on campus. We're very fortunate. We're very blessed beyond what I should be. Um, but that's why I fight so
Yeah.
hard for it, because there may be people on campus or elsewhere, not campus. We have great support of Southern, right? We have really good support with the administration. Um, but they don't understand. You may be gone in 5 years. I'm not, right? This is who I am. This is what I
Mm,
do. I'm not looking for the next big job. I haven't been for a long time. I've had
right.
plenty of opportunity, but this is, and I think that sometimes plays in my favor, sometimes doesn't. But I think that awareness just I've always had it.
Hmm.
I've always had it, at least since I've been in college, um, when I met Dave. But I think that it just changes with the more expectations that are on my plate.
Yeah, I see this like as a tug of war. I see this rope, and on one side, I hear passion and conviction, and then the other side, it's overbearing, jerk, etc. And that's a fine line. I would you want to people, and you want a head coach, and you want administrators and your staff. You want people who have passion and conviction, uh, but there is that fine line of like, well, how far does it go before it becomes overbearing? You're
And I've
being
overstepped
mean.
that bounds plenty of
Yeah,
times.
yeah, sure. I
And
think
I agree.
I think a lot of people who have created a lot of value in the world have as well.
Sure.
Do not hear me comparing you to this person as I'm about to make this example here. But Martin Luther King had a lot of passion and a lot of culture and pissed off a lot of people. A lot of people called him
Sure.
a jerk and an a-hole and all that kind of stuff as well. But thank God he had passion and conviction
Mhm.
to do the things
Yeah,
that he did. You do not get a comparison to Martin Luther King, Bryan. Not yet. One
not
day,
yet.
maybe
No,
in
I
your
don't think so.
career, in your life, you'll. I was like, I want to make that very clear what we're doing there. All right, Bryan. As we head into the last few minutes here, look into your crystal ball. What has got you excited? You said you're 17, I think, there at Missouri Southern.
Mhm.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I love that. What's got you excited about Missouri Southern coming up here in the future? And you get to define future. Is it 26, 36? What is it? You tell us. What's got you excited?
I, what, what gets me excited, to be honest with you, is what we have built to this point. I mean, I think it's great. And we've had a major facilities upgrade, with Leggett and Platt getting completely resurfaced, new colors. We're going to start hosting indoor meets again. The
Nice.
ability to train the athletes in a better environment, I think is exciting. You know, in the short term, we had an excellent team this year. We have larger numbers than we've ever had. We have outstanding recruits, and I think expectations are very high for this year for our team.
Nice.
I try to, and I think it's been a life goal of mine. Obviously, didn't know I wanted to be a coach, or I don't know if this is still the job where I'm going to end up at, being a coach. Um, I'm excited because my wife and I get to work together. I got two healthy kids. One's going to high school, or she's second year in high school. The other's 6th grade, and just things are awesome, right? These
Yeah.
things are just fantastic. And I think it's always been a goal of mine to have a happy family, a healthy family, in a position where we are in a good spot. Like we're certainly not wealthy beyond means, and we're certainly not hurting at all.
Right.
But team wise, there's a lot of movement. We're trying to finalize some funding for a new outdoor complex. And the support that we have within athletics administration is outstanding. Now,
Mm.
trying to get that to bleed over into some other areas is my next step without being too overbearing.
That's right. Keeping that tug of war in the right spot.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Bryan, known you for a while now. It really does amaze me. And now, got to learn more about you. Something you said very, very early in today's conversation, and I would have, I agree wholeheartedly, and I would have said it if you didn't at some point during our talk. You've always, in a good way, but you always, not the chip on the shoulder necessarily, to some degree for sure, but I've always been in awe. I'm not sure if that's the right term of your. I always have to prove myself to people because Bryan, you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. First of all, you've done so much for crying out loud. If there was a barometer of like to prove yourself as a coach, you've proven yourself over and over for two way major ways in my book. One is the positive experience you give young people. The kids that you coach, the 18 to 22-year-olds that you coach, 99% of them are not going to go on to become pro, right? You've had your
Right,
run. uh,
right,
but 100% of them are going to go on and become moms and dads and business owners and engineers and
sure,
track coaches, et cetera. And so
right,
that's your real impact on society. The experience you give them, the leadership you give them, that they go on and put into practice in their real lives what you have shown and your staff has shown them during track practice. And two, I'm just always so loved and so blessed of your family, your wife and your kids. We've talked a lot about them. That's the majority of our conversations when we're together at track. And that's why I love you so much. Honestly, I'm tired of talking about like long jump technique with people. I'm sorry. It doesn't excite me. You and your life and your kids, and that excites me. So those two things, very, very successful. So, you don't have anything to prove. And it may be, I'm no psychologist here. It may be the way you have to drive yourself, and that's okay because I don't think that's a negative. But just know, bro, you have nothing to prove to anybody. You are a great individual. You're a very good coach. You're an even better person. You're a great husband. There's so many roles that you have: dad, husband, son, brother, that are way more important than coaching. And you are knocking it out of the park, my friend. So just very
Well,
proud of you.
I appreciate you saying that and getting it recorded so I can show that to my wife. And
That's right. I know you're listening,
yeah,
and well, I was going to say take it easy on him, but you know what? He needs you. Don't take it easy on him. Stay who you are. Don't take it easy on this guy. But Bryan, man, so excited for you. So excited at Missouri Southern. Again, Missouri Southern holds a special place in my heart. I love that you're going to come back to hosting meets because I just know the experience I had going to
oh
Missouri
yeah,
Southern for meets. That's a part of my DNA. And so I'm excited that other people will have those examples as well. Love the colors, by the way. They're pop. You guys did a great job there. That's going to
oh
be
you did,
so.
yeah, they look
Yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah. It looks amazing. It's so good. So I love that that's happening for you. The potential for other, upgrades and facilities and things like that. And boy, getting it done in the toughest conference. I don't know if you'd say it's the toughest, but it's at least one of the toughest conferences out there. And what a great example of longevity with your staff there and things like that. It's just you guys do a great job there, and I just want to shine a light on what you're doing. I think other people need to see that. I think athletes need to see that more. I think high school coaches need to see that more. College coaches that. We love as coaches to talk about our young people and this whole D1 or bust mentality, but let me tell you, I hear that for coaches as well. If we're going to say it about our athletes, we better start doing better in our examples. And I think what you guys are building, what you're building there, and the staff is building is a perfect example of doesn't matter if I see you play on Saturdays or not. It matters what are you doing with kids and involved in our sport. And you guys are knocking it out of the park, man. I'm really proud of you guys. Really proud of you.
Appreciate that.
Bryan, my man, most expensive thing you can ever give me. And, you do a lot. And I'm so grateful for that. It's your time. And so really, really thankful for your time today. I know you're busy. School's getting started here soon. Your own personal
Oh
kids
yeah.
are going to school. Mine start tomorrow. Can't imagine if you guys have already started there. That's its own, fun. And cross country is getting ready to probably show up for school.
Or tomorrow.
Never stops, man. It's really, really
Yeah.
amazing. So thank you so much for your time and sitting down, being so humble and authentic with us and sharing your journey.
I appreciate it tremendously. Thank you.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you for being here again this week. I had an absolute blast. It's every one of these are fun. 300 and plus. I think we're at 330 or whatnot for this episode here. But I have a friend who, like I said, the majority of our conversations are not centered around track and field. Some are, but it's around family and how that and our profession and how it goes. And those honestly, those conversations mean the absolute world to me to have those because I care about you as a person first. I care about Bryan way more than I care about Coach Shiding, if that makes sense. So just always proud to be able to share that journey, where they came from and how they got to where they are today. And he and his staff are doing a great job. So thank you for being here today and this week. Join us next week. We'll do it all over again. See you guys.